Um, Hello, folks. I'm Blake White. I'm going to moderate the panel. That's oh, I'll be moderating the panel. I'm Blake White. Can everyone hear me now? Okay, great. More? Okay. Wow. That's about as close as I can get, right? All righty. All right. Let me try again. All right. Welcome to Silicon Harlem and to this panel, Privacy and Security in a Data-Driven World. I'm Blake White. I'll moderate the panel. I'll introduce the other three panelists in just a minute. If you would allow me, Clayton mentioned I came from California. I do live in California, but I just want you to know my commitment to this community is pretty rock solid. My birth certificate says I was born in Harlem Hospital. So, all right, so 60 years later, now we go. So let me level set with just three or four slides to just give you some sense of the topics we'd like to cover, and then I'll introduce the panel. So in an era of increased digital engagement, we give away more data than we realize through apps on our phones, on computers, online transactions, and through very smart devices in our homes, and on our persons sometimes. The IoT, the Internet of Things you heard about this morning, is in full flower. According to the Pew report, there are 8.4 billion connected things in the world today in use. These include IoT in cars, voice-activated assistants, road sensors, public safety and security devices, smart meters, personal fitness and health trackers, thermostats, pressure gauges, pollution detectors, cameras, and microphones, all of which are capturing data. The very connectedness of IoT leaves it open to security flaws and vulnerabilities. And the example that I frequently cite is in 2016 at the DEF CON conference. 67 vulnerabilities affecting 23 IoT devices from 21 manufacturers were disclosed. When it comes to the public sector and the utilities sector, the electricity grid of the United States is 7,000 power plants, 55,000 substations, 160,000 miles of high voltage lines. It's the largest interconnected machine in the world. And as the grid has become more dependent on computers and data sharing, it's also become more vulnerable from humans and bots. This we saw in 2015 and 16 in Ukraine. It could happen here. 70% of all financial transactions, including 197 billion in managed investments by over 1,300 hedge funds, are performed by algorithms. A rogue algorithm is one of the major banks, or a cascading failure among banks, could lead to catastrophe. And according to the MPAA, that's the Motion Picture Association of America, the box office revenue could increase by 14% a year in the theatrical window if piracy could be eliminated. And in fact, they also reported in 2017 that the online streaming of illegal content is now more popular and dominant than the previous illegal downloads. It's now 42% of all online piracy. However, in my history in Silicon Valley and elsewhere, my experience is that no technology can secure content or systems that human beings themselves have not committed to secure. And that often, many of the vulnerabilities can be reduced by human action rather than just through technical means. Now, when it turns to data and privacy, the industry challenges to engage customers with an individualized, personal level of attention, but do so in a privacy-assured manner. But according to stories that we've all seen in 2016 and 17, and publications in online like CNN, Extreme Tech, Wired, and the Daily Mail, they raise concerns about consumer tracking and data privacy of Google Play, Google Home, Amazon's Alexa, and even Bose headphones. CBS ran a story about government concerns over spying billboards based upon the phone data that's in your pocket or purse. As we found in the 2016 election, news content is in part automatically generated and personally targeted through electronic means, be that a person or a bot. The good news is more people are getting concerned about the use of their data and the availability of it. Cognizant studies indicate that 91% of people worry about who sees their personal information, and 57% of those won't do business with a company that misuses their data. In fact, there's an all too often tendency for media technology platform operators to surreptitiously spy on their customers. But earlier PwC research found that a trust-based relationship actually encourages consumers to voluntarily share more data. And recent Cognizant studies backed it up, noting that 45% of consumers surveyed will share the personal data with trusted companies if they openly explain how the data is going to be used. PwC also found that Consumer Privacy Bill of Rights, if there were one, might actually increase consumers' willingness to share that data. And if that's true, Europe might be the bellwether to test this idea. Now, I won't go into details on this, but you might be aware of a European privacy regulation that went into effect this summer called GDPR. It's General Data Protection Regulation. It is the right of individuals to control their own data. And in doing so, their definition of personal information is pretty extensive, as you could see on the slide. It includes not only personal information about me, but any information that can be directly or indirectly inferred back to me. That includes not just names, address, and phone numbers, and Social Security number equivalents and such, but ID numbers, location data, online identifiers like cookies and IP addresses. And it also is non-technical. It includes any factors that could help you identify the person's physical, physiological, genetic, mental, economic, or cultural and social identity of a person. So if you're a European citizen, you have the right to control all of that. Now, organizations outside the EU, like American companies that do business in Europe, are subject to EU laws and regulators just by capturing data on an EU citizen. And there are stiff financial penalties that apply if you violate this. For example, if you export data across country boundaries outside of the EU, there could be a 20 million euro penalty per incident, or a 4% max of your global gross revenue as the penalty. Now, I've never ran the numbers, but I have heard through urban legend that if Facebook had done, what happened to Facebook during the 2016 election meddling with Cambridge Analytica had happened in Europe, Facebook could have been on the hook for up to $4 billion. So this is serious stuff that is increasingly going to be the subject of not only technical discussions, but human interactions and laws. So today, we have three panelists that will be joining us, and they're from right to left here. You see Chandana Madhaswamy. She is unfortunately not with us this afternoon due to illness, but we have Seema Shah from the LaGuardia Community College of the City University of New York. We have Michael Melore on the far left end from IBM. He's a cybersecurity advisor. And Macdonnell Ulsch from the Macdonnell Ulsch Cyber Advisory LLC. They're our resident experts, and they will be addressing the issues and questions. Now, the format we started a little late. They want us to end a little early. Go figure. So given that amount of time, I'm not going to read their bios. You have access to them, and you can understand how they fit this particular panel. Each will share a brief statement on the most important cybersecurity and privacy issues, and we'll have a moderated Q&A with some questions from me, and then I'll open up to you in the audience. So there'll be about a total of 15 to 20 minutes for just Q&A. With that, let me turn it over. Seema, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Yes, you can do that from there.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Seema. I work as the Director of Tech and Innovation at LaGuardia Community College. And our role, specifically my role on this panel, is to talk about Cyber NYC. This is just hilarious. Thank you. To talk about Cyber NYC, which is a $30 million initiative from the City of New York to accelerate cybersecurity innovation as well as cybersecurity training. Has anyone heard of Cyber NYC? It just was announced a few weeks ago. So LaGuardia was one of the recipients for this cyber bootcamp portion, where we are going to be actually helping up to 1,000 people over the next 3 years get trained in cybersecurity fundamentals so that they can enter the industry and go to market. Because I think, frankly, to answer your specific question, Blake, I actually think one of the biggest challenges or barriers to cybersecurity innovation is the shortage of talent. And the shortage of homegrown talent that are aware of the issues and that can think about, a variety of different ways to handle and tackle them. So, what we're interested in doing from LaGuardia's perspective is actually holistically growing out the cyber workforce in a way that it's never been done before, which is to be intentional about diversity and to be intentional about the types of programming that we deliver so that there's a variety of, talented professionals hitting the market over the course of the next 3 years. So the grant from the city allows us to offer cybersecurity training free of charge to any New Yorker that wants to think about pivoting or transitioning into the industry. And I'm happy to talk more about that as well.
Don?
Hi, Don Ulsch. I guess you would say I'm a cyber threat futurist. I fill, a number of different roles. I'm a research fellow at Boston College at the Wood School of Advancing Studies, and I focus on the cyber threat, and I also consult in this area. My background has shaped what I think is going to happen in the future. And I would maintain, as I have in my last couple of books, that to understand the future of the cyber threat, we have to look at it within the context of China's economic expansionist strategy based on a program called Program 863, North Korea, Iraq, Iran, Syria, and Sub-Saharan Africa. So these are the regions that are developing in terms of cyber threat capability, advanced networks, as Blake talked about, the Internet of Things. So understanding how each of these areas is going to play out from a cyber threat perspective is what I focus on. And I would offer the following. Right now, we are at parity. So on some days, China, North Korea, Russia side wins. This includes transnational organized crime. So we got hacktivists, transnational organized crime, as well as nation states, as well as other types of hackers.
Move it even a little bit closer.
Okay, thank you. So I think that if we look at those different types of hackers, and look at how they are plugged in geopolitically, we see the potential for extreme growth in our cyber adversaries, and particularly in China and North Korea. So this is where we focus a lot of our attention. Now, in the event that we see the continued efforts geopolitically moving toward the current cyber threat scenario, just a few years down the road, we may actually see that tipping point reached where our adversaries, particularly China, Russia, and North Korea, will actually exceed our capability to defend reasonably against them. So friends like Mike at IBM will talk a little bit about the defensive aspect of this, but right now, I would say that our trajectory is one that is very concerning from a cyber threat perspective. And remember what cyber threat really means. It's not just technology. It's political, it's military, it's intelligence community, it's organized crime, and nation-state economic competition. So again, you can't really think about cyber threats without looking at this economic competition in the future. So from my point of view, when we look at the cyber threat, we have to look at it from multiple dimensions, not just the technology.
And Michael?
Great. I'm Michael Melore from IBM. So my role is to shift the way of thinking, almost at the theme of this event, rethink everything, to shift thinking around security from a tactical approach to a strategic approach. And I represent a number of no-fee-based knowledge-sharing educational programs that are no fee based, just to educate either yourselves or your stakeholders. The irony of data, the services that you use today that are free. If you're not paying for a product, you are the product. So consider that in every solution that you're using where you're not paying for the services, and you could basically get what you should be expecting. They're going to be marketing your information. They're going to be utilizing that information in any ways that they can. So there's been a strategy of security that's been around since 1984 that came out from the NSA. It was called a defense in depth strategy. The premise of a defense in depth strategy is that you have layered security controls, and based on these layers, if the first layer maybe misses some type of offense or an event, then hopefully another layer of security would be able to intercept that. We've had that solution in place, and almost everyone in the room is probably, or your enterprises, are using that philosophy probably, well, since 1984, yet we've become numb to all of the different breaches that have come out. We could see all of the loss of data records that are out there. You know, chances are your information your personal information is out there as well from some of those breaches. The records typically go for about $50 per record on personal identifiable information, even for healthcare information. Some of that those healthcare records, your healthcare records, actually are valued at about $1,000 per you in the audience. So that information is monetized, and it's being utilized outside. So that's the reason that we're here. We'll talk a little bit more about that.
So this is Silicon Harlem, and there's a mix of developers, entrepreneurs, educators, interested citizens, activists, and government officials. So for the tech people here who probably know what these words mean, forgive me, but I'm going to ask Don if you would mind just quickly giving just a quick summary of what some of these cyber threat terms mean. You know, we hear about phishing, we hear about spoofing, we hear about attacks and such, and there's a number of those. Just for the general public, could we level set that?
Sure. So phishing is responsible for some of the biggest data breaches, some of the most severe, resulting not only in the loss of your financial records or your health records, which, by the way, are used to create false income tax returns. So that $1,000 value that Mike just talked about, that what your record is worth, that might yield $25,000, $50,000, $100,000 in tax returns illegally to organized crime operating principally out of Eastern Europe. But phishing is simply, there's phishing and there's spear phishing. So phishing is where you just sort of like cast this wide net to a large group of email addresses that you have to see who may respond. And you've probably heard, if you get an email from somebody you don't know, don't click on it, open it up, because if you do, you're signifying to somebody that you exist and that email is valid. And spear phishing is simply where you have a more targeted list of email addresses. It might be executives that you may have read about in the newspaper. But once you have their email address, you can actually try and spoof someone into believing that you are that individual. So there are many kinds of spoofing. I won't go into them all, but there's GPS spoofing about where you are or your point of origin. There is cell phone spoofing. There's email spoofing, there's IP address spoofing, many types of spoofing, but basically it's pretending to be somebody that you are not and trying to convince somebody that you are who you are not. And then there was a spoofing, phishing.
There's spoofing, phishing, hacking, there's malware, there's espionage, there's a whole range of these things.
So hacking is just, the definition of hacking is actually gaining unauthorized access. Under U.S. law, unauthorized access into a computer system. Now, there are various levels of hacking. You can simply get into a system. You can actually steal something from a system. You can deposit malware into a system. And malware is nothing more than just, think of it as a virus, something that may actually broadcast back information from your computer to the originating source of that malware.
Okay. So you mentioned in the example of don't click on something from a person that you don't know. Are there other kind of best practices that everybody at the individual level needs to take? And Michael, similar, for enterprises and institutions, are there other best practices that everyone should be doing at the job? Other than what your particular company has as policies. So.
I mean, sure, there's a long list of things that you should be doing just to protect your identity. Some of it involves the computer, others involve, things that you can do to not disclose your information. But I would hate to tell you how many times I've written out my Social Security number or typed it in somewhere where I'm simply required to do that. But you do want to try and guard your personal information. Reducing social media activity to sort of the minimalist level, which I know is probably not something that anybody really wants to do, but social media is a huge pool of information, and people find out a lot about you through social media and can develop profiles and target you. And what do they usually end up with in social media? Your name, the names of your friends, where you live, where you went to school, often your phone number, an email address, a messaging address. There's all kind of information. And that's one thing that's used in spoofing, when people can pretend to be you because they know so much about you. Now, I'm going to say one other thing about something that you can do. And this is not real popular when I talk to groups, but I'm going to say it anyway. There are things that you should do. Mike, I'm sure, is going to expound on a lot of them as well. But ultimately, if there's a breach of information, it may be less likely to actually come from a device under your immediate control. The bigger risk is institutional access to devices. I mean, I may want your information, right? Or maybe I want your information, but I'm going to have to go to some trouble. I don't know who you are, right? We've never met before. But you know what? Chances are you probably do business with one of the big banks in New York City or New Jersey. So if I was going to steal something, wouldn't I want to get 10 million other pieces of data sets? So I'm going to try and go to a larger institution to get that information. Then I'll have lots of leverageable information, lots of data sets, lots of profiles, financial information, full information about you as individuals, depending on the site that I actually break into. And there's one thing about these institutions, and that is, let's say you're a $1 billion company or you're a $500 million company. And this is something that I defend clients on when I go to regulators after they've been breached. And I will tell the regulator, or I'll tell the FBI or the Secret Service, my client generates $1 billion in revenue. They have a security budget that is X. Their adversary has a $30 trillion or a $5 trillion budget. from the military, or maybe it's North Korea, where they have 6,000 very well-trained cyber hackers. 6,000. Most of them, by the way, trained in New York. Many of them trained in New York. But 6,000 who will spare no expense to bring money into their treasury by hacking into your banks, into your retail operations, into your hospitals, into your insurance companies. So the risk is that when you surrender information, the security offered to defend that data is often going to pale in comparison to the size, the strength, the willpower, and the tenacity of an economic adversary or transnational organized crime group that wants your data more than your company is willing to defend it.
I'm gonna change the question, Michael. Let me ask you a different one, just because they ask us to finish on time, even though we started late.
Sure.
So I'm gonna ask you a different question, and then I have one for you, Seema. So, building off what Don is saying, and we heard so much about IoT and automated means of systems are talking to systems. So machines are talking to machines. Before humans could ever figure out what the machines are talking about, what kinds of things need to be or can be done or are being done to help monitor and control how the machines are talking to other machines?
Sure. So now we heard, I think, on one of the keynotes earlier this morning about the digital currency. Let's think about that digital currency for a moment. So these ransomware attacks that are out there and these payments that are being made to these bad actors anonymously, these payments that they're receiving are actually reinforcing their own bad actor resource and development. So the R&D that they're able to put in is very advanced, and these actors, they're not folks from their garages. These are state actors and so forth, and highly organized. So now what they're able to do is acquire the talent to even develop themselves the latest technologies, which is AI, or you might think of it as artificial intelligence or cognitive security. I like to refer to it as augmented intelligence, because it's the security is really augmenting the value of the staff leveraging the cognitive capabilities. So the same ways that these machines are now communicating together, we need to actually, if you're not using artificial intelligence or augmented intelligence to combat these folks, you're at a disadvantage. So, and if you think just briefly, just kind of getting back to that on the social media theme as well. So. You know, when I was growing up, we heard the term con man. I don't even think I've heard that in the last maybe 10, 20 years, but maybe you might have heard of that term where somebody got conned or whatever. What does that con stand for? It stands for confidence. So these bad actors gain your confidence around something. Now, I'll ask you, don't raise your hands because I don't want to know any of this, but think about your own out-of-the-office messages. Have any of you put out an out-of-the-office message on your email that you're not in the office today? And I'm not in the office, but if in case of an emergency, contact my partner, Sue Smith. So now, how easy is it for me to contact Sue Smith, because I have her contact information, and say, Mary told me that in case of an emergency, I needed to contact you in a rush, that you might be able to help me. Here's my situation. Now, I've just gained confidence with that person because I know Mary already, and she directed, you know, maybe Sue isn't even aware that Mary has the out of the office in her email that indicates that I need to contact her. So there's some protective things that you can start thinking a little differently around that realm. But back to the machine learning and to the machine communicating to one another, there's a lot of security controls that could be in place that are actually now monitoring some activity. And based on behavioral anomalies, they could raise red flags. Now, based on those red flags, it could invoke an alert for a human to interact and maybe disable or engage, or you could have rules and policies that are automated that maybe immediately isolate that machine because something doesn't look right. So these are the controls that you can leverage if you're, if you have the luxury of an enterprise doing this, then you can install these particular tools. If you're not at that enterprise level, you could leverage either services, managed services, to start providing those values.
Okay. Last question from me, and then I'll open to the floor. Seema, you mentioned the training and the programs you have at LaGuardia College. Given the audience, could you speak to the importance of getting the diversity and non-traditional pathways to the people being trained for cybersecurity, the importance of that, and what the message is to this Silicon Harlem audience?
Absolutely. Thank you. I just want to add one more point to what these two gentlemen were speaking about in terms of personal tools to secure yourself. The city's chief information security officer is a person by the name of Jeff Brown. Him and his team released an app called NYC Secure. Has anyone heard of it? Yeah, and does anyone, you have it? You downloaded it? Yes, so it's actually an app. It's a free download. There are no ads on it. Hopefully they're not taking any of our data, because that would be very cyclical. But basically, it's an app that lets you identify if you're connecting to free Wi-Fi or connecting to protocols that are unknown to you, to check to see the validity of that network and check to see how secure it is. Is that accurate? Yeah. And it's a free download. I mean, they've been advertising it for a while. I'd recommend everyone download NYC Secure. Back to Cyber NYC. The goal of Cyber NYC, like I said, has 3 prongs. The first is to actually work with, is anyone here a cyber entrepreneur or thinking about entering into that space? Yes. It's actually to work with early stage cybersecurity entrepreneurs around providing them access to space, mentorship, and financing to help accelerate the growth of that business. So all of this is under the Cyber NYC umbrella. If you Google Cyber NYC, you will find it. You can also obviously talk to me after. That's the first prong of Cyber NYC. The second is around creating what they're calling commercialization of research. Academic research. So if you or anyone you know is working in a privacy or security setting in an academic kind of environment and is interested in kind of spinning out a potential business, Cyber NYC will work with you to help you do that, to monetize and commercialize your business. And then the third part, the part that LaGuardia and a private sector boot camp provider called Full Stack Academy are leading, is around the training elements. So again, like I said, our objective, our goal is within 3 years to train and place 1,000 people in cybersecurity jobs throughout New York City. We're doing this in partnership with basically every industry, because cybersecurity is not a concern just for healthcare or just for technology. It's a concern for academia. It's a concern for basically every industry. I don't need to name all of them. But our goal, specifically at LaGuardia, is to actually, we created something called a bridge program, which is essentially meant for anyone that wants to enter into the cybersecurity field, but let's say your entire history and background is in medicine, or is in some other element of healthcare or law, or you're a student that has decided to finish their studies at the high school level or the GED level. The bridge program is designed to essentially help level the playing field before you enter into the really rigorous boot camp environment that Full Stack Academy will be providing. So the bridge environment is about 6 weeks. It's full-time. It's a baseline understanding of the vocabulary of cyber and some of the mechanics of it. It's a little bit of light coding that we include in the cyber bridge program as well. And again, it's not for everyone. So if you're already kind of ready to go, you have that technical and digital literacy already, you can streamline directly into Full Stack Academy's penetration testing cybersecurity bootcamp program. But if you are someone that wants a little bit of that level setting and that baselining, again, the city is opening this up to anyone and everyone. There's no income cap, there's no age cap, which is rare, very rare in the grant making world. Like I see a few people nodding. Like this is for everyone. And you know, obviously we want to serve a low-income population. That is LaGuardia's bread and butter. But again, we will make the Bridge program as well as the Full Stack Academy program open to any New Yorker that comes under the Cyber NYC umbrella and qualifies. So please, you know, feel free to reach out to me directly. It's all listed on the Cyber NYC website. The first cohort will not start until March of 2019. So we're still in the getting the word out phase. We're still in the recruitment phase. And really, you know, I think what these two gentlemen are really talking about is even if a cybersecurity career is not for you, cybersecurity kind of an education or a retraining of our brain to be aware of the threats, you know, specifically insider threats and outsider threats, like our international bad actors. That is really what we are trying to spearhead in our campaign as well. So just the cybersecurity training is kind of the second part, but really the foundational piece of it is cybersecurity education for all.
Okay, thank you. According to our timekeeper, we have 5 minutes maybe for audience questions.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, wait, is that a signal of a different number than 5? Oh, you have a question too. Okay, the guy behind you then was first.
Just like on the enterprise arena, where are the insurance companies at? I mean, I know after 9/11 when we had TRIA, you know, whether or not these incidents are going to be covered under force majeure, or, you know, I think that's been a big part of why, you know, companies like Target. Try this. So we just start over again?
Yeah.
You're hearing me, right?
The camera's captured, but we couldn't hear you through that.
You know, their willingness to report when an incident happens because it hurts their stock price. You know, so, and I know there has been mandates in the financial arena, but what about the mom and pops in that arena? And
Sure.
the insurance companies, do they mandate that?
So some of the governance regulations are actually driving the new behavior. So if you think about all of the organizations that are not investing the appropriate funds towards their security frameworks, a lot of them have difficulties even opening those purse strings from their from their boards. So So there's a balance between the regulations and whether they should be regulated or not regulated. But I'll tell you the truth, there's a couple of industries that are already looking at blended threats, physical and logical security already, which is energy and utilities and the transportation industry. They're looking at physical and logical threats together instead of being separate for blended threats. That will even drive more of that correlation for enterprises, because they're, even let's say financial institutions, since you brought up insurance, they have their physical security folks, their chief security officers probably more focused on the physical aspects of the perimeter security versus the CIO and the CISO, chief information security officer, chief information officer. They're looking at the information threats. So when do these folks talk? Well, they may talk when they realize that there's a blended threat, but in most cases they might not even make that conclusion. So
We have fire inspectors. We're going to come to the day where we're going to have an IT inspector.
yes, yeah. So great question. So threat hunting, you referred to I2. Is that right? That's the threat hunting space. So threat hunting is going to be a new frontier in career opportunities for organizations. Most organizations are starting to look at some folks that are looking outside of the perimeter before your fences are tested, not waiting for that incident. Sorry, I know there's another question.
I would just add one thing to what Mike was saying on the cyber insurance side. Cyber insurance is largely at its infancy. It's changing dramatically with every new major type of breach. The insurance is changing. But I will tell you that if you're a publicly traded company and you're regulated by the U.S. Securities Exchange Commission under the 2011 and 2018 Cybersecurity Risk Management Guidelines, cyber insurance is required, And there's also a separate requirement under the regulations to make sure that your third-party vendors also have cyber insurance sufficient in the amount to cover a projected loss at the principal company. And that is sort of a what's that?
That's going to box certain companies out.
Well, you know, it may, but here's the problem. Most companies don't know how much an actual cyber breach would cost, and yet, under the SEC guidelines, that is one of the requirements to understand what that type of breach would cost under certain conditions.
I've seen organizations try to say they want unlimited liability. That's very difficult, but I've been seeing more and more of those requests anyway. They don't really go anywhere, but...
Hi, my name is Aisha Ogilvy. So I'm on the community board for Washington Heights and Inwood here in Manhattan. However, I'm a developer. I also have done tech training for Google and Microsoft, where I train people how to protect themselves, and, you know, permissions, etc. However, I'm entertaining putting a resolution before my community board because something that I saw starting to happen recently is very shocking to me, which the tech side of it seems to be easy, whereas monitoring and things like that can address concerns, but we still haven't addressed the human factor. So for instance, in our hospital, New York Presbyterian Hospital, recently I went to visit someone, gave my ID, and they hand me back my ID with a badge that has my picture on it, my name on it, which means they scanned my ID, they now have my address, my date of birth in their system. Same thing happened in a government building where I gave my ID, and I was never asked to authorize that I would allow that to happen. Right. So that's a concern. So part of the answer has been addressed. You talked about threat hunting. What is the path that you see that we need to undertake addressing the full layer of what we're going into?
Sure. So there's a couple of aspects. One is whether or not these organizations should arbitrarily collect information or not collect information. The other side of the coin is do all of you even know where some sensitive information resides? There's a concept of structured information and unstructured information. Structured information, for those who maybe they're not aware, would be more like a database, very structured table type information. So you would have maybe some field name that indicates social security number, and then you would expect to see everybody's social security number in that table. But unstructured data is video surveillance, text files, comments. So supposing that a call center talks to some customer, one of you folks in the audience, and then maybe you divulge some information. My wife is going for some surgery next Tuesday, so I'm not available. And then they put something like that in the comment. Well, you know, could that be interpreted as personal information that Mike Melore's wife is going for some surgery or something and with the date and everything else. So now, if you're looking through your structured data where you would expect to find that sensitive information, you may not be looking at this unstructured. And how do you even find unstructured information? That's where cognitive security could help out. So like if you're looking through all of your systems for a social security number, what might you do with a rule and policy that's defined? You might say, I'll look for 9 characters, I'll look for 9 characters with spaces, maybe 9 characters without spaces, 9 characters with dashes, here's a telephone number, 10 characters. Nope, not that. But what if my car insurance policy, by the way, for social engineers in the room, is 9 characters as well? So now, how do you distinguish between some information that might be a social security number or might be my car insurance policy? So cognitive security can make that hypothesis based on the context of the information in the paragraph, because it interprets that information. So that's where artificial intelligence or augmented intelligence or cognitive security is going to change the game.
I think the lights are telling us that we're run out of time, so that'll be the last question. Please join me in thanking the panel. And okay. Thank you all.